Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and this is the show where we talk about our favorite things in the world. Movies and movie news, TV and streaming, those things that give us joy. I am not coming to you live today. I won't be coming to you live for the rest of the week, as I am on the road. I am currently, for the first time ever, I am right now in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I've been driving around the town this morning, and it's a beautiful town. Matter of fact, I even stopped at the Walmart to pick up some stuff, and when I came back to my van, I kid you not, there were two roosters walking around my van in the Walmart parking lot. Is that a normal thing here in Louisiana? I don't know, but I thought it was pretty awesome. Anyway, guys, good to have you here. And, one of the reasons why I'm doing the show pre-recorded is because of my driving schedule. I'm actually recording this. Now, normally we do the show live at 11 a.m. Los Angeles time, but I'm recording this show at 6 a.m. Los Angeles time. So that just gives me a better driving schedule because I'm on my way back to LA now. And anyway, guys, we've got a lot of great stuff to talk about here today. So let's not waste any more time and let's get right into it. And we're going to start with this. Well, you guys know that one of my most highly anticipated shows is the new series coming up called Lanterns. It's DC based on the Green Lanterns. We've been waiting for it for a while. It was supposed to come out in early summer of 2026. So the original plan was this movie was supposed to come out prior to Supergirl, which made some people believe that maybe there's some stuff that happens in Lanterns that leads into Supergirl. I don't know why it would, but that's what a lot of people thought, and I even thought that was a possibility. Well, then we found out, of course, that Lanterns we just talked about it earlier this week, that Lanterns was officially pushed back to late summer of 2026. Not a big move, but it's enough of a move to mean that Lanterns is now coming out after Supergirl. So whatever thoughts we may have had that Lanterns may have some things in it that lead into Supergirl, I guess we don't have to worry about that because I guess it's pretty disconnected. So anyway, Lanterns is now coming out after Supergirl. Bummed me out, but we might not be too far away from the first trailer because according to this new report coming to us from Games Radar, it seems that a first trailer has been screened at an HBO event. This is what the report on Games Radar says. It says, the first teaser for the upcoming DCU series Lanterns has reportedly been revealed behind closed doors, and it mixes a little of what we already know about the Green Lantern show with a sprinkling of James Gunn-style comic book deep cuts. It goes on to say, according to Brazilian outlet Omelette, Lanterns was shown at an HBO upfront presentation. In the trailer, Aaron Pierre John Stewart is shown alongside Kyle Chandler's Hal Jordan, but Hal is acting as a substitute mentor for the Green Lantern who was meant to be, for the Green Lantern who was meant to be mentoring John in the first place. Described as a Western in tone, the trailer also dips into Hal Jordan and John's bickering dynamic, as well as showcasing Hal Jordan mid-fight. Now, it goes on to give a little bit more deep stuff here. In a curious moment, a reference to Green Lantern Corps member Chip. Now, I've read the name 100 times. I've never heard it said out loud, so I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. But anyway, Chip is dropped. For the uninitiated, Chip, who first appeared in 1982's Green Lantern number 148, is a squirrel-like alien from the planet Hevlin who does battle with extraterrestrial forces, all while wielding the power of the Lantern Ring, and we thought that Rocket Raccoon was strange. All right. So, first of all, a number of really interesting things in here. The first one I'll touch on, which is the least interesting thing to me, but we might as well touch on it here, is the reference to Chip being in there. Now, this is what I think they meant when they talked about it having some James Gunn style deep cuts, because a character like this, a character like Polka Dot Man, a character like King Shark, these sorts of characters, these are deep cut characters that only a filmmaker with the history of knowing his comic books like James Gunn does will want to bring to life and bring to the big screen. Now, obviously, a lot of people are going to think Squirrel Girl, Rocket Raccoon, but I mean, I honestly don't know and don't care which character came first. But I thought this was an interesting move that they said they're going to have this, at least in the movie. It's not clear whether or not he's in the trailer. It just says that he's at least mentioned. So maybe we'll see him in the movie, maybe we don't. I'm guessing that we probably do see him in the movie. All right. The interesting things to me in this report basically come down to two story points here that I find are really interesting. One main story point, one more of an action motif. The story point that I find really interesting is we kind of assumed, I think, that Aaron Pierre Johnson's Jon Stewart was going to be mentored by Kyle Chandler's Hal Jordan. But it was curious that we heard a lot of reports that they were going to have a lot of bickering. They were going to stand off a lot against each other. They don't really get along all that well. Well, one of the things in this little tidbit we just got from Game Radar is the fact that I guess Hal Jordan wasn't supposed to be Jon Stewart's mentor. It was supposed to be somebody else. And now Hal Jordan has to step into that role. Now, whether that means something along the lines of whichever Green Lantern was supposed to do it gets killed, maybe that's the mystery they're trying to solve. Remember, there was a lot of reports coming out that saying this show is going to kind of like be like True Detective in spirit. So a lot of us, including myself, have kind of assumed that there would be a murder mystery angle to it. And I kind of thought maybe they kill Guy Gardner, who was in the Superman movie. Maybe Guy Gardner dies and the two of them got to team up to solve the mystery. Now I'm wondering, and I'm just speculating, okay? There's nothing to back this up with. This is just purely me speculating. But I got to wonder now, finding out that Hal is mentoring John and he wasn't originally supposed to be the mentor. I can't help but wonder if there's a murder, and we don't know that there is, if that murdered person might be the original Green Lantern who was supposed to be Stewart's mentor, and now the two of them have to work together to figure out who did it and figure out how to coexist and get along. If they're doing that, I find that pretty interesting. I'm not going to lie. I find that really, really interesting. Now, the other part of this that I really liked hearing was that we are going to get some action in whatever this first trailer is. And look, we're going to get a lot of Jon Stewart in the movie. Of that, I have no doubt. I'm really excited to hear that we're going to get Hal Jordan mid-action scene. Again, to me, you got to understand, for me, Hal Jordan is the definitive Green Lantern. I know for a lot of the younger audiences, like Jon Stewart has kind of been kind of the main, or at least one of the main Green Lanterns for this generation, and I get that. But Hal Jordan was the Green Lantern for multiple generations. Not the original one. I mean, there was one before him in the comics, but I'm a big Hal Jordan guy, I have to admit. So I really am excited to see in the trailer them going to give him some action of his own. Now, this, of course, raises the question, when are we going to get this trailer? I mean, if they're showing it at these events now, granted they're intercompany events, and that's fine, it leads me to believe that we must be getting close to getting a first look. Now, look, the show is still a long ways off. Let's say it comes out in September. Or even, let's be more general. Let's say August. They said late summer, which probably means September, but let's say it means August. We're still in November. So that's December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. That's still 9 months away. That is still a full baby away. So based on that, I wouldn't expect a trailer to drop anytime soon. But I mean, if they are showing it to some people already, if they've even created a trailer to show intercompany, then maybe that means they're thinking about dropping the first hints of it to us as the audience. Maybe we could get it before Christmas. I don't know, guys. Question is for you. What do you think about this? Apparently, there's been a first trailer of Lantern shown to people in company at an official event. We're hearing that we're getting some story points here that Hal Jordan is a replacement mentor for Jon Stewart. We're going to get some action sequence. We're going to get Chip. I don't know. There's a lot of things. Whatever stands out to you guys the most in this report, or if you have any theories about all this, jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this. Wicked for Good is now in theaters. And, I did my review of it. I liked the film overall. I thought the first half was really weak, like very stiff, very wooden, had no voice, had no heart really. And then, no pun intended. And then the second half of Wicked for Good, I thought it really picked up, found its heart, and left me by the end of it having enjoyed it. But I didn't like it anywhere near as much as I liked the first Wicked. And look, if you look at the reviews, the critics don't like it nearly as much as the first one either. I mean, it's still got a significantly positive 68%. And as you can see, the audience score is stellar at 94. But generally speaking, the movie's just not quite as good as the first. That's fine. I still liked it though. Like I said, the second half of Wicked for Good was solid enough and good enough that it left me overall having enjoyed the film. So I like both Wicked films. I love the first one. I like the second one. But there's always been something that's kind of bothered me. And I remember I even felt this with the first Wicked film. And I loved it. I loved the first Wicked film. But I didn't have it in my top 2 or 3 best movies of the year, let alone thinking that it should have won Best Picture at the Oscars, which I didn't think it should. I had no problem with it being nominated. And I started wondering, somebody asked me once, why wouldn't you rank it higher? I mean, you loved the acting, you loved the story, you loved the take on Oz, you loved the new mythology, you loved the music. Why didn't you rank it higher? And I remember saying last year to somebody, I'm not really sure, it just doesn't. I just enjoyed these other ones more. Now, after watching Wicked for Good, I think I'm putting my finger now on the one thing that is really wrong with the Wicked films. Now, this is a subjective thing. It may not hold true for you, but I know this is what it is for me. Here's what's holding me back from thinking the first Wicked film was a serious contender for Best Picture, or that Wicked 2 wasn't even better than I already liked it. And I think it's this. Wicked has no stakes. There's no stakes. At least it never lets us feel the stakes. Look, I don't mean to draw a comparison between Wicked and the MCU. They're totally different things. But just as an example, when you watch something like Infinity War, it's one thing to say, oh, there's this big purple grimace going around who wants to wipe out half-life in the universe. Okay, that's fine. We know that. But for that to really carry emotional weight, you have to make your movie in such a way that the audience feels the threat. They feel what's at stake. And I would submit that Avengers Infinity War did a great job constantly of making us feel that threat, of the immediacy of the danger, of the urgency of the quest. We've got to stop Thanos. This is, everything depends on this. And we as the audience, as that movie is going along, we feel what's at stake. We feel the threat level. We understand why the Avengers are doing what they're doing. I would submit to you, having now watched Wicked and Wicked for Good, a series that I love the first one, like the second one, but I would submit to you the one big flaw for the Wicked films, and again, it took me a year to put my finger on this, but is that there are simply no stakes. We get it through the movie that Elphaba is really mad at the wizard. Why, though? Well, 'cause he lied. Okay, but, and follow me here, from the amount that we are exposed to the people of Oz, everybody in Oz is very safe. Everybody in Oz is happy. Everybody in Oz is singing songs. I don't see a homeless problem on the streets of Oz. I don't see, even Munchkinland. Everybody seems good and happy. They have their own little dramas going on, sure, but everybody is good and happy. And so throughout the films, and especially as we get into Wicked for Good, why is Elphaba again so angry at the wizard? Why is it important to me as the audience member that Elphaba stops the wizard or exposes the wizard? Now, you can say, and I understand in theoretical terms, well, yeah, John, that's fine. That's all good for the people of Oz and the Munchkins, but the animals. Oh, he's being very mean to the animals. And much like if you were just talking about Avengers Infinity War and saying, okay, there's a big purple guy who wants to destroy half life in the universe. Okay, that's fine, but you got to make the audience feel that. You got to feel the threat. You have to feel what's at stake. And I don't think personally that Wicked ever did a good job of that. The most they did was, we saw Goat Professor get his glasses broken. There's a little musical number, and I won't give too much away here, but there's a musical number where some animals in Oz are escaping through a tunnel. Like, there's a few moments that they try on a very thin level to make us feel what's at stake, but I don't think they do a very good job of it. And so the whole premise of the story about the angst that Elphaba feels towards the wizard, we just know it as an academic fact, but we never feel it. Let me give you another example. It's one I use a lot, but I think it's applicable here. When you look at John Wick, the filmmakers understood we're about to have this guy, John Wick, the hero of the movie, do unspeakable, horrible, evil violence on people. He's about to murder a lot of people. How does the audience get on board emotionally with the righteousness of John Wick to the point that nuns, religious nuns, in their outfits in the movie theaters will stand up and say, them fuckers gotta die. John Wick, get 'em. I mean, how do they do that? Well, you know how they do it? They don't just kill John Wick's puppy. The movie spent time. It took its time in the beginning of the film to let us get attached to the puppy ourselves. Like, we as the audience get attached to this adorable puppy. They didn't just do a quick 15-second thing. They actually spent a little bit of time because they knew it was important for us to be on board with John Wick as he goes on this unspeakable quest of violence. For us to completely be on board with him, they understood they got to get us as the audience to feel it as well. You can't just tell us, they killed a guy's puppy. Okay, that sounds terrible, but that's not going to get me emotionally on board. So what they did is they spent time getting us attached to the puppy, but they didn't just get us attached to the puppy. They got us as the audience emotionally invested in the bond that the puppy and John Wick formed. A puppy that John Wick's beloved dead wife left for him so he could have companionship. So he could have something to give his love to. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about the beauty of it, right? And so what John Wick did was they took time to get us attached to the dog itself, but also got us emotionally invested in the bond that Wick had with the dog. And when that puppy and when that bond were stripped away from John Wick, we as the audience felt it. We felt it. And from then on out, not just in John Wick 1, but John Wick 2, John Wick 3, John Wick 4, and 6, 7, and 8 that are coming, we are completely on board with the anger and the quest and the mission and the motivation of John Wick. I present to you that we never got that with Elphaba. We never got that with Elphaba. As great as Cynthia Erivo played her, she was magnificent in the role, but we never got that with Elphaba. Yeah, I get it. She showed up, she always idolized the wizard, and she found out there and said, wait a minute, the wizard can't do real magic. But emotionally for me as an audience member, that never got me to the point that I'm like, yeah, now I totally get why Elphaba would totally like leave everything she's known and make herself public enemy number one and have to live on the run. They never did a good job of making us feel it. They told it to us in an academic way. Oh, the animals. She felt lied to by the wizard. Okay, but again, Avengers Infinity War, life as we knew it was on the line. Half of existence was going to be snapped away, and we felt it. But as somebody watching Wizard of Oz, I'm like, everybody in Oz seems pretty happy, and the only times they don't seem happy are when Elphaba is around. So what's why is it so important? Again, academically they could tell us, but they never made me emotionally feel it. About why is Elphaba doing what she's doing? What's at stake? And I think if they were able to do that, had they been able to pull back that curtain, I think my appreciation of the Wicked films, and I do appreciate them, I think my appreciation of the Wicked films would go up many, many more times. Anyway, guys, that's just my one movie fan's subjective opinion about the real one thing that's kind of holding back an even greater enthusiasm from me for this Wicked series. Maybe you felt it too. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you think I'm totally wrong about all this. Whatever you guys think about it, jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? You know, I have a really interesting relationship with the Rush Hour films. I honestly didn't like the first Rush Hour that much, just to be honest. And I love Jackie Chan, but I didn't love Rush Hour that much. Then Rush Hour 2 came out with Zhang Ziyi in it with Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan, and I loved it. I love Rush Hour 2. To me, it's still one of the best sequels ever made. Not that it's like one of the greatest movies ever made, but as far as an upping the quality in your franchise from part 1 to part 2, I honestly think Rush Hour 2 is one of the best examples of a great sequel. I loved it. And so, I was very excited when they announced Rush Hour 3, and it was total dog crap. I hated Rush Hour 3. It sucks. But, you know, so I have a love-hate relationship with Rush Hour. Anyway, they've been talking for years and years and years about doing a Rush Hour 4, and nothing has ever come of it. Well, now, it's not official that it's happening, but it sounds like we might actually be getting a little bit of Rush Hour. The folks over at IndieWire are telling us the following. They're saying this: it seems that the winds have changed for a stalled Rush Hour 4, with reports from multiple outlets this week indicating that Paramount is circling a deal to distribute, not produce. That's a big thing to understand here. To distribute the latest installment in the buddy cop franchise led by Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker. The news was first reported by Matt Bellani. IndieWire hears Paramount is indeed in talks to distribute the film. So, first of all, a couple of key things to point out here. Number one, it's not a done deal, it's in talks. Number two, they're in talks to distribute the film, not to be the producers of it. Again, not taking anything away from the story, but I think that's important to keep in mind. Anyway, IndieWire goes on. The first Rush Hour film released in 1998, followed by the second and third sequels in 2001 and 2007 collectively. It's been 18 years since the last Rush Hour. Anyway, collectively grossing an estimated $850 million for Warner Brothers to date. News of a possible fourth installment broke in 2017, 8 years ago, the same year that the franchise director Brett Ratner was accused of sexual assault by a former Endeavor employee and of sexual harassment and misconduct by 6 women, including actresses Olivia Munn and Natasha Hendrich, in a Los Angeles Times report. The controversy surrounding Ratner, who over the years became deeply entwined with Warner Brothers, partnering with the studio via his company Rat Pack Entertainment, temporarily deterred industry players, including New Line, from getting involved in projects carrying his name. Now, it's important to understand that, it's not like this franchise is a huge cash cow. Okay. Rush Hour 3, I believe, made under $250 million. Now, it's not bad compared to its budget. It's not bad compared to its budget, but I'm just saying it's not like the world rushes out to go see Rush Hour, right? Rush Hour 3, which again to me was terrible, but it made under $250 million, if I'm remembering it correctly. So it got stalled and stalled and stalled. Well, now, what I say? How many years later? 18 years later? 18 years later? Since the last one? I mean, I don't know, guys. It seems to me like lately we've been getting some lessons that these studios need to learn about trying to bring back these franchises that have been sitting, that were never that popular in the first place. Again, I love Rush Hour 2, I really do. But I mean, to bring them back this many years later, by the way, Jackie Chan, who is already getting older in the last couple of Rush Hour films, he's now 71. So he's probably going to be 72 by the time they shoot. It's 73 by the time the movie comes out. Now, don't get me wrong, none of us are in as good a shape as Jackie Chan is at 71, regardless of how young we are. It doesn't matter. He's Jackie Chan. Still, I kind of question, is there actually an audience? Because listen, you're going to hear pop online. Oh my God, they're going to do a Rush Hour 4. That's fine. But when the time actually comes and tickets go on sale, are people actually going to run out to go see Rush Hour 4? For a lot of film goers, a film franchise that hasn't been around since they've been born, depending on how young you go. By the time this movie comes out, it's going to be 20 years. If it gets made, the earliest this movie comes out will be 20 years since the last one. Is there going to be an audience? I'm not really sure. Now, there's also some stuff going around about this whole thing about, it was the President Trump who, at his behest to get this thing going. And some people may ask, well, why would President Trump care? Well, Brett Ratner, who again has been on the outs with Hollywood after like 7 or 8 different women came forward accusing him of some pretty terrible things. Now, it's important to note, never any criminal charges that I remember. I could be wrong about that. But I don't think he was ever convicted of anything. That being said, the only project that Brett Ratner has done recently is a documentary about, I believe, Donald Trump's wife. That I think is coming out on Amazon sometime soon. And so there's talk going around that maybe because of that because Brett Ratner is very pro Donald Trump, that Donald Trump would then say to his friends, the Ellisons, hey, let them make a Rush Hour 4. And listen, nobody has confirmed that, by the way. None of the major outlets have been able to independently confirm that. That might just be a rumor that's not actually true. So it's not really worth talking about that much. The more important thing here is Rush Hour itself. And look, I just talked about how I have this love-hate relationship with it, and I do. But if I'm going to be honest, while I don't think it's a good idea to make a Rush Hour 4 at this point, would I run out to go see it? Yeah, if I'm being honest, I am. Look, it's just because I love Jackie Chan, and I loved Rush Hour 2. Yeah, I didn't like 1, and I didn't like 3, but Rush Hour 2 at least showed us there was potential. And if they could tap into that again, I don't know, maybe it could be good. And maybe be something to look forward to. So again, do I think it's a good idea? No. Do I think they should be doing it? No. Do I think a lot of people will go to see it? No. But will I rush out to see it? No pun intended. Rush out to see it. Will I rush out to see it? Yeah, I gotta admit I probably would. So I don't know, guys. Question is for you. What do you think about this? There are reports that Paramount is at least in talks to distribute a Rush Hour 4 if somebody else makes it. Good idea? Bad idea? And listen, when you guys comment, do me a favor, separate for internally in your head whether you're looking forward to seeing it from whether do you think it's a good idea overall. Because for me, those are two different answers. Like, I don't think it's a good idea overall, but I would go out to see it. I don't know. How do you guys feel about it? Whatever your thoughts are, jump down into the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? Well, one of the hottest things in the world right now is the potential sale of Warner Brothers. Of course, Warner Brothers is up for sale, and they let everybody know, put in your first bids. And so, everybody put in their first bids. Everybody being Paramount, Netflix, and Comcast Universal. Now, when they put out the call for first bids, they did mention that the first bids are not binding. And it's important that they said that, because normally in contract law, let me get into the weeds here a little bit. If you make an offer and then somebody accepts the offer, whether it's in writing or not, that is a legally binding contract. Did you know that? In writing or not. So I've talked about this before. There are several. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it, admittedly, but bear with me here. Generally speaking, for a legal contract to exist, you have to have an offer. There has to be acceptance. There has to be consideration. And there has to be capacity. Now, it is more complicated than that, but generally speaking. So what does that mean? For a contract to exist, somebody's got to make an offer. Hey, Bill. Yes, Tim. I would like to buy your Stanley Cup, and I will pay you $50 for it. There's your offer. Tim. Wow, Bob. Did I get the names mixed up? Anyway, owner of Stanley Cup. That's a very good offer. I like that offer. I accept. So, we have offer, we have acceptance. What about those other two things? Consideration. Consideration means something's being exchanged for it, right? So I can't just say, hey, give me your Stanley Cup, and the guy says, yeah, sure. That's not a contract because no money's changing hands. There's nothing of value changing hands. For a contract to be legally binding, you've got to have consideration. In this case, it's the guy who wants to buy it offering $50. That's consideration. All right, so we have the offer to buy it, we have an acceptance of the offer, and we have consideration because there's money. Now, what is capacity? Capacity means the two people involved are the two sides or three sides or four sides or five sides. However, we're just going to keep it simple and say the two sides. That capacity means both sides of the deal are able legally to enter into that contract. So, a 7-year-old is too young to enter into a contract legally. So you can offer the 7-year-old $5 for, I don't know, his $500 toy, and the kid could say, sure, doesn't matter. It's not a contract because that 7-year-old child does not have capacity. In this case, if the guy selling the Stanley Cup doesn't actually own it, well, then the guy doesn't have capacity to sell it. So therefore, it's not a legally binding contract. Now, the reason I go into all of that, and forgive me for the long diatribe there, but the reason I go into all that is because it's very important to understand that in this first round of bids, Warner Brothers made it clear the first round is non-binding. That means go ahead and make an offer, but we are not going to hold it. We're not going to hold you to it. You're not legally bound. It's just to give us an idea about what you're thinking and what kind of numbers you're thinking about, right? So the first round of offers came in. They were not legally binding, but it gave Warner Brothers an idea of how much Paramount was going to be willing to spend, how much Netflix was going to be willing to spend, and how much Comcast was going to be willing to spend. Well, Netflix, or Warner Brothers, I should say, looked at all the numbers, and apparently they didn't like the numbers. Because now, according to a report in Variety, Warner Brothers has gone back and said, okay, guys, time for the second round of bidding. Second round of bidding is binding. So if you make an offer and we accept it, you're bound to it. But just a little insight, make the numbers bigger. We're not happy with the numbers you guys presented. This is what it says in the report. They said some media mergers and acquisition teams may be working through the Thanksgiving Day weekend. Warner Brothers Discovery, which is fielding acquisition overtures from Paramount, Skydance, Comcast, and Netflix, is asking for second round bids by December 1st, so like next week, that are higher than the original proposals Variety has confirmed. That are higher than what they've originally asked for. It goes on to say news of Warner Brothers Discovery's deadline for the second round of bidding was first reported by Bloomberg News. Following the submission of the new bids, the company, quote unquote, may enter a period of exclusive negotiations with one of the companies, per Bloomberg's report. The first round offers for Warner Brothers Discovery were submitted last Thursday, November 20th, from Paramount, Skydance, Comcast, and Netflix. All right. So, to summarize here, Warner Brothers said, give us your first bids. They're not binding. Netflix, Comcast, and Paramount all sent in bids. Warner Brothers is now saying, thank you very much for the bids. Now send in your real bids. Oh, and by the way, make it better because we're not happy with the dollar amounts you're sending in. Listen, I gotta say, every time, and it's not like there have been thousands of them, but every time I followed something where it's like been first rounds of bids and then second round of bids, I can't recall ever hearing a company then coming back and saying, oh, hey, great, now make your real offers bigger. Those are cute. Those first offers you sent in, yeah, that was cute. That was adorable. But now it's time to get serious, guys. Paramount, Netflix, Comcast, time to get serious, Warner Brothers is saying. Send us your real bids. Now, here's why I find this interesting. And I could be completely wrong about this. I could be completely out to lunch. This could be way out of left field. But as Rob and I have been talking about the potential sale of Warner Brothers, we've always said we would rather Warner Brothers just doesn't sell. Like, that's our preference, but we know it's an inevitability. They're going to sell. So here are the pros and cons of, Paramount getting them, pros and cons of Netflix, pros and cons of Comcast, NBC Universal. But we'd really like Warner Brothers to not sell, but they're going to, okay? Get out of the dreamland. It's going to sell. It's going to sell. Last week, I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were kind of talking about the whole progression of this thing and, the fact that Warner Brothers turned down so many early offers that, say, Paramount gave them. Apparently, Paramount made like 3 different offers before they opened it up for bids from everybody. And some of them were pretty big dollar values, and they kept getting rebuffed. And a friend of mine said, if this drags out much longer, I'm starting to suspect Warner Brothers has no intention of actually selling. And my first reaction to that was, well, that's silly. Of course they're going to sell. That's not even a question. But the more I thought about it, the more I pondered it, I started to think that maybe he's right. Not that I don't think they're going to sell, but that if this drags on a lot longer, maybe they're not actually interested in selling. And a part of me can't help but wonder. Again, there is no basis for this. This is purely me as an individual movie fan, an outside observer, purely speculating and guessing, okay? Let me be clear about that. This is just me purely guessing. But a part of me wonders, when I heard Warner Brothers say, hey guys, send in your real bids now. None of your bids are high enough. Send in higher bids. A part of me is wondering if this is Warner Brothers giving themselves an out to not sell at all. Again, I have no basis for that. Okay? I'm just admitting clearly I have no basis for this. But to come out and say that, it almost sounds like they're preemptively giving themselves cover to say in like a couple of weeks, we fielded offers. We fielded offers. So they can say to their shareholders, hey, we tried to get you guys the best deal. But we don't feel that any of the bids that came in accurately represent the value being offered by Warner Brothers Discovery. Therefore, we think it's going to be in the company's best interest just to keep it ourselves, and we'll continue on with our plan of splitting the company in two, of there being a Warner Brothers HBO studio side and of there being the television side, and each becoming their own two companies. We think there's going to be more value for our shareholders that way. Now, they may be right or wrong in saying that, but again, hearing this makes me wonder, as the words of my buddy pop up in my head when he was starting to doubt Warner Brothers was actually planning on selling, and then hearing Warner Brothers say, hey, yeah, none of your bids are high enough, do better. I don't know. Maybe it's complete craziness on my thought, but look. If I had to put $5 on it about whether or not I think Warner Brothers is actually going to sell, I would say yes. Okay? That is still the smart money, that Warner Brothers will sell to one of these companies. I'm just saying, I'm starting to get a little suspicious, and I could be way off base on that. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Do you think that Warner Brothers is being, I don't know, difficult by telling all the bidders that they got to bid higher? Or do you think maybe, like, I'm starting to just a little bit suspect that maybe they're laying the groundwork for feasible deniability? I mean, I don't know. Whatever you guys think about it, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's talk about this, shall we? You know, there's been some absolutely fantastic TV lately. Like, absolutely fantastic TV lately. And one of the best, not the best, but one of the best shows I've seen in the last year or so has been HBO's and DC's Penguin series. I've absolutely loved it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And there's been a lot of talk about whether or not HBO would actually continue on and do a season 2 of the Batman spinoff of Penguin. And we've been getting a lot of negative indications lately. Like we heard from Kristen Milioti, who was absolutely fantastic in the show, saying that she has her doubts it'll happen. We've been hearing Colin Farrell saying, what's the point? I mean, we did it. We're tempting fate too much if we do sec one. I doubt we'll do a sec one, all that kind of stuff. So the kind of assumption that's been going around lately is that, well, there's probably not going to be a Penguin season 2, but hold the phone. Because now HBO's CEO is saying, oh no, we're still thinking about Penguin season 2. This comes to us from the folks over at The Direct who wrote the following. According to one high-ranking HBO executive, the CEO, the Batman TV sequel is still on the table. Matt Reeves' The Batman wowed audiences back in 2022, debuting its grounded and gritty take on the world of the Dark Knight on the big screen. Reeves would continue this exploration in Gotham City canon in 2024 with the acclaimed Penguin TV series. Penguin, which saw the Batman star Colin Farrell return to reprise his role as the show's titular DC Comics villain, was considered by fans to be a single-season miniseries. But the assumption that there were no further plans for future episodes. That tune has started to change in recent months. HBO CEO Casey Bloys provided the latest update on a potential The Penguin Season 2 during a recent content update from the premium cable network, I should say, revealing that conversations are still ongoing for a second batch of episodes from the Batman spinoff. As transcribed by Screen Rant, we are talking to the DC team about what a second season of The Penguin would look like. All right. Look, I get it. There are a lot of people out there who kind of feel like, dude, season 1 was great. Let's leave it alone. There's no need, I hear from people. There's no need to do a second season of it. Move on. I personally wholeheartedly reject that thinking. I totally reject that thinking. Making a great TV show is, I would say, primarily about the characters you're creating and the characters you're exploiting. Because it's the characters that people follow. there's other things too. I'm just saying in general. Like a great example for me that I always bring up a lot is Supernatural. Was every season of Supernatural have a killer story? No. Many seasons did, some seasons did not. But I still loved watching those seasons. Why? Because I tuned into Supernatural to hang out with the Winchester boys. That's why I tuned in. I tuned in to hang out with Castiel and to hang out with Crowley and to hang out, with all the Bobby when he was around. I loved the characters and I just wanted to follow along with the characters. The suggestion for me that there's nowhere left to go for Penguin's story, to me, is ridiculous. That doesn't mean you have to do a season 2. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you're stupid if you think they shouldn't do a season. I'm not saying that. But what I will say is that some of the explanations I don't buy. There's nothing left to tell. Really? There's no more exciting, interesting, deep stories to tell of this character brought to life by Colin Farrell, who is now like the crime lord of Gotham? Really? You think there's no more stories to tell there? Fascinating. Also, you're telling me people wouldn't love just seeing more of Colin Farrell in this role that won him a bunch of awards? Now, does any of that stuff automatically mean you must do another season of Penguin? It does not. It does not mean they must. And it's okay if they don't do one. But I think HBO, and apparently HBO thinks this too, you'd be fools not to at least pursue the possibility. Because this show was fantastic. And it's like any other sequel thing. A lot of people say, oh, if you do sequels, you just ruin the original. You know what? I'm so glad the people who made Toy Story never said that. Because when they made Toy Story 2, they were going to make it a direct-to-home video thing, right? Because it's like, you're risking ruining the first one. But they made Toy Story 2, which for a long time was the highest critically rated film of all time. For a long time, it was the only wide-release Hollywood film that held, over years, a 100% rating. I don't know if it still does. Somebody might have went in there to put in a negative review. But anyway, for a long time, Toy Story 2 was it. And then when they announced they're going to do Toy Story 3, everybody was like, you're going to ruin Toy Story. Just leave it alone. Toy Story 2 was perfect. The ending was perfect. Why do another one? Well, you do another one because you have a great idea for a story. Because you have beloved characters that you think you can do some really fun and interesting and entertaining things with. That you've come up with a hook for those characters and a new adventure for them. So instead of listening to all the naysayers, they made Toy Story 3. And thank God they did, because it's one of only 3 animated films in all of history to actually get nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. And it was fabulous. And all those people said, don't do Toy Story 3, it'll ruin it. So then they said they're going to do Toy Story 4. And once again, you're going to ruin it. Toy Story 3 is perfect. Didn't you say that about Toy Story 2? Yeah. But now it's Toy Story 3. Toy Story 3 is a perfect ending. And it was a perfect ending. I'm not denying that. Why do another one? Because they came up with another idea. To utilize these wonderful characters that people want to see more of. And while Toy Story 4 was not as good as Toy Story 3, hell, I would say if you're ranking the 4 Toy Story movies, I think Toy Story 4 is in last. But it was still quite good. I really enjoyed Toy Story 4, and it made a lot of money. And now they're making Toy Story 5. Anyway, I go into all that just to say, why do another Penguin? Well, because people loved it. It was absolutely fabulous. And there are plethora. Do you know what a plethora is? Oh, yes, I know what a plethora is. Bonus marks if you know that. There are a plethora of stories to tell with these characters that could be fabulous and awesome. So again, do they need to do another Penguin? No, you don't need to. But would it be a good idea to pursue it? If you can come up with the right story, 100% they should do another one. And I will be there with bells on. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Do you like the idea that the head of HBO is saying, yeah, we still are interested in Penguin Season 2? Now, it doesn't mean it's automatically going to happen, but I think it would be great if it did. Anyway, whatever you guys feel, jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this. Zootopia 2 is upon us. It's about to come out, and now we're getting our first look at the early box office tracking, and it could be even bigger than one of the highest grossing animated films of all time in Frozen 2. The folks over at Deadline have given us this, talking about Zootopia 2. Hollywood can look forward to Thanksgiving box office history repeating itself with a robust Wednesday to Sunday domestic opening expected from Disney's Zootopia 2 with 125 million plus. That result could make the sequel to the 2016 Disney original film animation titled the second highest opening ever over the Thanksgiving Day box office, behind last year's Moana 2, which made $225.4 million. Of course, that movie went on to be a billion-dollar film, and possibly ahead of 2019's Frozen 2 that made $125 million over its 5-day Thanksgiving weekend in the movie's second weekend. That's how big it was. All right. So they're saying right now that the projections for Zootopia 2 is 125 mil. Now, that's the long Thanksgiving Day weekend. That's not like a regular weekend. But I'm already seeing a lot of industry tracking saying that that number may be low. That this could come in, maybe not super significantly higher, like not like 175 or anything like that, but I'm seeing some industry insiders saying that this is going to be bigger than that. Now, they might be right, they might be wrong. What's interesting here, in talking about how big could a Zootopia 2 be overall, Frozen 2, again, a $1.4 billion animated film. Let me say that number again. $1.4 billion. One of the highest grossing animated films of all time. Its opening weekend was 130. That means for Zootopia 2, it's within striking distance of that number. Now, I only say that because it's not terribly important whether it makes 125, 130, 135, whatever. But if it does make more than, say, Frozen 2 did in its opening weekend of 130, and again, it's going to have to break expectations to do it, but it's within striking distance. Well, then we're going to have to start asking the question, how big can it be? Because once again, Frozen 2, with that $130 million opening, went on to make $1.4 billion. Now, lest we get too carried away by that, we do have to acknowledge that Zootopia, while beloved by a lot of people, is not nearly on the same level of belovedness as the Frozen franchise. Okay? Like, maybe some adults might prefer Zootopia, but like when it comes to kids, man, yeah, a lot of kids love Zootopia, but the insane passion and commitment I've seen from children to Frozen, crazy. Like, honestly, whenever Ann and I walk around Disneyland or anything like that, 100%, the number one cosplay, whatever you want to call it, cosplay, costuming, whatever, the number one thing I see, exponentially more than anything else, and I'm sure those of you who go to the Disney parks can attest to this too. What is it? It's the sisters from Frozen. That's what little girls are all dressed up as. They're all dressed up as the sisters from Frozen. Elsa and Bertha. I never remember the other one. So the other one's name is Bertha for now, because I can't remember the other. But Elsa and Bertha. That's how they're all dressed up as. They are. I don't see anybody dressed up as a rabbit and a fox. I do see some Zootopia t-shirts. Don't get me wrong. So can we assume that Zootopia 2 will have the same kind of legs as Frozen 2? Well, maybe not, because it's not as beloved. But then it all depends on how good the movie is. And we've heard some very strong early reactions saying that this movie's really good. So if it is, now you guys know me, right? Like, I really like Zootopia. I thought Zootopia was really good. But I'm not as in love with Zootopia as a lot of other people are. Like, a lot of people I know are. I'm just not in love with it to that degree. But that's fine. I'm still looking forward to seeing it. But if it could be really good, and if it can get that like 130, 135 million opening weekend number, we very well could be seeing the next $1 billion film. You know, somebody asked on the show the other day if I expected to see Zootopia 2 make $1 billion. And I said, well, primarily because of the fact that there's like 15 to 20% fewer people going to the movies today than there were when the first Zootopia movie came out. I don't think it'll make $1 billion, but it'll make a lot of money. Well, these numbers are suggesting I may be wrong. Like, if it can do that $130 million opening, and if the movie, and this is a big if, big asterisk here, but if the movie is as good as we're hearing, maybe making that $1 billion is going to be easier for it than I was thinking. I don't know. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. Guys, question is for you. What do you think about all this? They're saying that Zootopia 2 is aiming for a massive opening weekend, and if it overshoots it by a bit, it could actually catch Frozen 2's number, a movie that itself went on to make $1.4 billion. How big do you think this Zootopia movie can be? Are you looking forward to it? Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's move on to this. You know, one of the big contenders, as we talked about a little bit earlier, for buying Warner Brothers is Netflix. And maybe arguably the most successful director of all time, not the greatest of all time, that's Steven Spielberg, but a man who holds 3 of the top 4 all-time highest grossing films in history, Jimmy C, the good Canadian kid James Cameron, well, he has some thoughts about the idea of Netflix getting it. Remember, there are 3 contenders right now for buying Warner Brothers: Paramount, Netflix, and NBC Universal Comcast. Those are the 3 companies that have submitted bids and will be submitting a second round of bids. Well, James Cameron's got some pretty strong feelings about one of them that he says would be an absolute disaster if they got it, and that's Netflix. This comes to us from Yahoo Entertainment via Coming Soon, who wrote the following. James Cameron is pushing back against the idea of Netflix taking over Warner Brothers, calling the idea a disaster. The director shared his concerns in a recent interview, suggesting that Netflix's approach to theatrical cinema is incompatible for the future of Warner Brothers. With industry speculation continuing, Cameron's remarks have sparked significant discussion across social media. James Cameron has expressed significant concerns about the possibility of Netflix purchasing Warner Brothers, saying that he does not believe the streaming platform is the right company to take over the studio. Now, just so you know, I also have said that I think Netflix getting Warner Brothers would be a complete disaster. However, I said, if Netflix remains committed to letting Warner Brothers stay as a standalone company, kind of like the way several companies work under Disney, like Disney still has controlling power over them, but they let them run and operate. And if Warner Brothers is allowed to put out their films theatrically, as Warner Brothers has always done, that would soften my take on Netflix potentially getting Warner Brothers. And of course, we did a report last week that Netflix has publicly said, we are going to continue to let Warner Brothers put out films theatrically if they do. Okay, that sounds good, but my boy Jimmy C isn't buying it. Said this, speaking on the Town podcast with Matt Bellani, the director said he is firmly in favor of Paramount taking over instead. Cameron said, I think Paramount is the best choice. Netflix would be a disaster. Sorry, Ted, but geez. He pointed to Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos' past claims that theatrical releases are no longer necessary, when they clearly are, noting Sandros has gone on the record saying theatrical films are dead, theatrical is dead, quote unquote. Now this is where it gets interesting. James Cameron goes on, Cameron also reacted strongly to Netflix's promise to increase theatrical releases if it acquired Warner Brothers. He said, it's sucker bait. The director criticized the practice of releasing films briefly in cinemas only to qualify for awards, describing it as fundamentally rotten to the core. He added, a movie should be made as a movie for theatrical, and the Academy Awards mean nothing to me if they don't mean theatrical. I think they've been co-opted, and I think it's horrific. All right, there's 2 interesting things here that are coming from our boy Jimmy C. One of the things is, and we'll talk about first, we'll get to the whole Academy Award situation in a second, but one of the things that he points out and mentions is the fact that He simply does not believe Netflix. Remember, I said I'm more okay with Netflix getting it. I mean, that wouldn't be my first choice, but I'd be more okay with it if they stayed committing to letting Warner Brothers films go theatrically. So Netflix comes out and says, yeah, Scout's honor. We're going to put out Warner, but we're going to honor theatrical. We're going to let Warner Brothers puts out movies theatrical. Yay, theatrical. Okay. Here's the thing. James Gunn just said the equivalent of liar, liar, pants on fire, which might be the name of his next movie. That should be the subtitle of Avatar Fire and Ash. Avatar Fire and Ash. Liar, liar, pants on fire. You're welcome. Send me a check. All right. So he straight up just doesn't believe Netflix. And listen, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time some corporation made some wild, grand sounding promise and then backed out on it. And James Cameron, who's been around this business for a long time, he just straight up doesn't believe him. He thinks maybe they're just saying that to make the Warner Brothers shareholders more sympathetic to Netflix, maybe. You know, the whole idea that, hey, Warner Brothers will still be Warner Brothers. But James Cameron is saying, what's the word? Malarkey. Is that an old-timey word? This is before my time. Malarkey, says James Cameron. They're lying. They ain't going to honor that. Which, I don't know, man. He's been around the business a long time. He has some thoughts, and maybe his thoughts are right. So that's something, because listen, if Netflix does take over Warner Brothers, and they just, what's the word I'm looking for? They just consume it. They just absorb Warner Brothers into itself and carry on with it, having no commitment to theatrical or anything like that. They're going to continue along their path to destroying movies. And that's what Netflix is doing. Netflix is destroying movies. They are. I've gone on why many, many times. I won't relitigate it all here. But Netflix is destroying movies. They're not just destroying movie theaters and movie going. They're destroying movies. And I've explained 10 points on why a million times. I won't do it again here. So that would be very concerning. Again, if they're telling the truth, okay, maybe there could be some upside. But if they're lying like James Cameron thinks they are, well, that would be pretty damn bad. But I want to touch on again, and forgive me if this is like a little pet issue for me, when James Cameron goes on and says, listen, Netflix films should not even be allowed for the Academy Awards. I still agree with him. I do. Listen, there's been a lot of discourse and a lot of back and forth about the validity or lack thereof of Netflix's movies being eligible for Oscars. Like, we just found out that BAFTA just rejected K-pop Demon Hunters. And K-pop Demon Hunters not eligible for BAFTA awards because they're streaming before they're a movie, before they're in theaters. And again, a lot of debate on the advantages, disadvantages, the qualities or lack thereof, the good reasons and the bad, why Netflix movies maybe should be eligible for Academy Awards or maybe they should not be. And remember, there are rules, and some Netflix movies meet those Academy rules, and if they meet those rules, then they're eligible. But James Cameron is basically suggesting here the Academy needs to change its criteria. They need to change the requirements because they're not movies. They're TV movies. Now, again, in all the history of all the back and forth, both sides debating, discussion, all the discourse about whether Netflix should be considered for Oscars or not, I have not yet heard anybody address this one key fundamental thing that has been a real stickler for me, which is this. There have always been TV movies. It's not new with streaming. Streaming didn't introduce the idea of movies on television. TV movies have been around long before I was born. All right? There have always been TV movies. And as such, movies that are made primarily for home viewing, there's always been an awards for those. They're called Emmys. Emmys have categories for best TV movies. And I'm sorry, but Hulu movies are TV movies. Disney original films, Netflix original films, they're TV movies. They're made for home viewing, either on a laptop screen, a television screen. I don't have my phone here. Your phone screen, whatever. They're made for home viewing. And historically, traditionally, forever, the place those movies get honored is the Emmys because they're TV. They're not film. They're not movies. Movies, like James Cameron, the most successful director of all time, saying that movies means theatrical. So, historically, the way it's always been done is that movies that are made for theaters, they get honored at the Oscars. Movies made for television and home viewing, they are honored at the Emmys. Not to say one is more important than the other, but they're two different things. And while streaming is new, movies made for the television are not. And I still have not heard a valid reason why movies that are made original by Netflix should not be made eligible. And by the way, others too. I want to include Disney Plus, Hulu, Peacock, whichever streamer makes original movies for their streaming service. I've not heard one valid reason why the place to honor those is in the traditional place they've always been honored, which is at the Emmys. I've heard not one valid reason why they should be included in the Academy Awards when no other TV movies in history ever have been, to the best of my knowledge. A little caveat there, maybe there is an example or two out there. I'd love to see it if there is, but generally speaking. So James Cameron is kind of suggesting here that the Academy needs to change their criteria, because right now it's really easy to make your movie eligible for the Oscars. Play it in like a single screen or two in Los Angeles and New York for a weekend or two, and you're good. That's all you really got to do. Now, if they want to put Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man and Knives Out Mystery, if they want to put that in theaters for a month before it ever gets to streaming, I'm okay with that. Then I'm okay with saying, yeah, Oscar eligible. But this whole thing about, just playing some little obscure screen somewhere, which is all you really have to do for a couple of days, and boo, Oscar eligible. Other than that, listen, I'm not saying good Netflix movies, which is an oxymoron, because there's only about 1 out of every 100 is any good. But I'm not saying good or great Netflix movies shouldn't be honored. I'm just saying I agree with James Cameron on this. Honor them, sure, but honor them where they're supposed to be honored, where they've always historically been honored. Honor them at the Emmys. They have no place at the Oscars, as far as I'm concerned, and I agree with him on that. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you make of James Cameron's comments? Several things. Number one, Netflix getting Warner Bros. Would be a disaster. Number two, he's calling their claim that they'll let Warner Brothers movies still be put out theatrically lies. And number three, again bringing up the debate about whether Netflix films should even be eligible for the Oscars. Whatever you think about them, guys, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's now end off our show here by playing a little round here, shall we, of what's more likely. A little bit earlier today, I jumped on the YouTube channel and I put out a post asking people to send in some what's more likely scenarios. We got a ton of them come in. I've picked out a few to address here on the show. Thank you to everybody who sent in a submission. So let's get to it and check out what you guys are asking what's more likely. We'll start off with this one. This first one comes to us from A.K. Malhammed, I hope I'm saying that right, who writes, what's more likely, a Tarantino-directed Marvel movie or a Christopher Nolan-directed Marvel movie? That is, okay, first of all, both of those are kind of dream scenarios for somebody who appreciates comic book movies. Those are both dream scenarios. A Christopher Nolan-directed Marvel film, a Quentin Tarantino-directed Marvel film. Now, the one I would prefer to see is Quentin Tarantino for two different reasons. One, I think he would bring something completely different to the genre. I think Quentin Tarantino would bring just something completely different than we've ever seen. In what way, I'm not completely sure. I don't think he would do it R-rated, but I think he would bring something really different. The second reason I would like it to be Quentin Tarantino is because you guys know I'm a massive Quentin Tarantino fan. That said, my one little knock on Tarantino is that all of his films are very much Quentin Tarantino films, right? Like Tarantino has a certain DNA to his films that even if you didn't know a certain movie was a Quentin Tarantino film, if you sat down and watched it for 10 minutes, you'd probably go, this feels like a Quentin Tarantino movie. You know what I mean? Quentin Tarantino does Quentin Tarantino movies. What I would love to see him do, which is why I was so excited a couple of years ago when those reports came out that Tarantino was considering doing a Star Trek movie. Part of the reason for my excitement wasn't just to see a Quentin Tarantino directed Star Trek movie, but it was also because I would love to see Tarantino get out of his own sandbox a little bit and kind of expand himself. So anyway, all that is why I would like it to be Tarantino. But this isn't what's more likely, it's what's more likely. And what's more likely is Christopher Nolan. Now look, it's very unlikely that either Christopher Nolan or Quentin Tarantino are going to be directing a Marvel film anytime soon. But out of the two, well, one of those directors has already directed some comic book films and has already kind of had their hand in that world. And that's Christopher Nolan. And on that basis alone, I would say that it is more likely between the two that it would be Christopher Nolan. All right, thanks for asking, man. All right, let's move on to the next what's more likely question here. And this one comes into us from Wade Simpson, who writes, what's more likely? In the new DCU, Batman already has his Bat family, or more likely he assembles it throughout the years. All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, like one of the big things about Batman in the comics is not just Batman himself, it's not just Bruce Wayne, it's the Bat family. A really ever-growing large Bat family, whether it's Robin, Nightwing, Azrael joined it for a while, Batgirl, Batwoman, on and on and on and on. There is quite a big Bat family. So in this new DCU, is it more likely that when we meet Batman, he's already got a Bat family? Or is that something we're going to slowly see him put together over time? I think it's more likely that they already exist. Now look, I think they already exist, but over time they're going to add members. But what do we know about Batman in this universe already? Number one, that he's already been around for a while, right? They've already established that. Batman has already been around in the DCU for a while. We just haven't met him yet. Number two, we know in the upcoming Batman movie, Brave and the Bold, it's going to feature the Damian Wayne Robin. Now, for those of you who don't know, Damian Wayne is not the first Robin. He's not even the second Robin. He's not even the third Robin. I believe he's the fourth. He might have been the fifth, but obviously the original was Dick Grayson. The second one was Jason Todd. The third one was Tim Drake. And then we got Damian Wayne. Now, if, as James Gunn likes to do, kind of stick with overall comic book mythology, if not the details, well, that means he's already had Dick Grayson as a Robin. Maybe they also say Jason Todd, maybe they also say Tim Drake, but you can't have Batman without a Dick Grayson. And if he's already on Damian Wayne as the new Robin, well, that means Dick Grayson is already Nightwing. And it's possible that Red Robin, Tim Drake, although he might be going by a different name now, anyway, who was Robin, then went on to become Red Robin, and he might be out there already too. So I believe it is more likely that when we meet Batman, there's already a form of the Bat family. It'll probably grow over time, but I'm thinking they're going to start off with it already being there. At least the basis of it is already going to be there. All right. Thanks for asking that, man. Okay. Let's move on to the next what's more likely scenario sent in to us by our viewers. And this one comes to us from Lost and Shore Films. Anyway, I'm sure I'm misreading that. Anyway, they write in, what's more likely? Paul Thomas Anderson wins his first directing Oscar, or Chloe Zhao wins her second. Of course, these are going to be these two are both getting nominated. Anderson, of course, for One Battle After Another. Chloe Zhao for what a lot of people are calling might be the best film of the year in the new Hamnet film that's about to come out. Chloe Zhao, of course, already won an Academy Award for Best Directing just a couple of years ago for Nomadland, a movie I frickin' love. And I really liked her Eternals movie. I know that a lot of people poo-poo on it. I honestly, I don't get it. That's fine. All film is subjective. I appreciate that movie a lot, almost as much as Rob does. Anyway, Chloe Zhao now has this new movie, Hamnet, coming out, which some people I've talked to are calling it is the de facto, it is definitely the best movie of the year. I haven't seen it yet myself. I still got to see that. I still got to see Marty Supreme. You know, there's one or two others that are coming out. Anyway. Whoo. It's so hard to say because I've seen One Battle After Another, but I haven't seen Hamnet yet. I will say, and by the way, I think neither of them are winning. I think Ryan Coogler is going to win Best Director. Anyway, that out there. But if you're asking which is more likely out of those two, again, hard to say because I've seen one but not the other. But you know what? Some Academy voters out of the 8,000 of them might think it's like it's time. Paul Thomas Anderson's got to get one, and maybe he gets it here. So I'll lean on for now. I'll say that. I might change my mind after I see Hamnet, but for now I'll say it's Anderson. All right, that down. Let's move on to the next what's more likely scenario sent into us, shall we? And this one comes into us from our viewer, New Generations, who writes, what's more likely? Sony selling the Spider-Man film rights back to Disney, or Disney selling Lucasfilm? Okay. All right. Okay, first of all, again, let me give the disclaimer that I don't think either of these scenarios are very likely. Both scenarios are insane. Because whatever state Star Wars is in right now, remember, Marvel was in a bad state once. And they started selling off the rights to characters, and it took them decades to get those characters all back. And look how valuable those turned out to be. Sure, maybe Star Wars is in a certain state right now, but it is a generation's legendary IP. You'd be insane to sell the rights to Lucasfilm. To sell Lucas. They'd just be insane. Even it may not seem all that hot right now. You sell it, 7 years down the road, 12 years down the road, 20 years down the road, you're kicking yourself. So that would be insane. And if you're Sony and you've got the rights to Spider-Man, why would you ever give those up? In what world would you give those up? You get to co-produce and distribute those Spider-Man movies that are making tons of money with Disney. It allows you the options to do some other films. By the way, the Venom films made a lot of money. A lot of money for Sony. And let's not talk about Craven and Morbius and Madam Web. But the Venom films made a hell ton of money for Sony. And they get to keep playing in the MCU in their way with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. They're making all this money. Why would you sell that? Why? So both scenarios to me are absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. But you are asking which is more likely. I will say this. I think it is more likely, even though both are basically close to nil, it's more likely Sony sells Spider-Man back. Again, it's one character. That comes along with a lot of other characters, granted, but Star Wars is a generation after generation after generation after generation. Hell, whatever you think about the latest 3 movies, guess what? Every single one of them made over $1 billion. Every single one of the new trilogy, that I should say. Obviously, Solo didn't, but, the trilogy, Rogue One, Andor, which is one of the best things on TV, is incredible. Best Star Wars thing ever produced since the original trilogy. It's a much larger thing. So while I think it's insanity to consider selling either of them, I think it would be more likely that Sony sells Spider-Man. Not to mention because also from a practical point of view, I mean, technically Marvel owns Spider-Man. They do. It's just that the rights to the character are currently leased out to Sony, and they get to keep it in perpetuity as long as they want. So both are highly unlikely, but the one that is more likely out of the two scenarios, I will say, is that Sony selling Spider-Man back to Disney. All right. With that down, let's get on to the next what's more likely scenario from one of our viewers. And this one comes into us from B. Waco, who writes, what's more likely? Indiana Jones' eventual reboot will be a theatrical movie versus a TV series on Disney Plus. All right, thanks a lot for saying that. That's a good question and I like the question a lot because you're smart. You're assuming the correct thing. They're going to reboot Indiana Jones. Oh, hell yes, know that. They are. It just may not happen anytime soon. Indiana Jones is way too big and popular of a property. Hell, despite the fact that the last couple of movies have not been so well received, the video game did gangbusters. What's it called again? The Circle of Feet? Whatever it is? Golden Circle? High Circle? Circle My Butt? I don't know. It was Indiana Jones Circle something. Wildly well received. I know there were some people upset about it before it came out because, oh, why is it a first person? Whatever. But apparently then it came out and it just got these wildly good reviews. So this is an IP that people still want to look to and still want to love. So they're going to do it. Now, when they do get around to rebooting it, what is it going to be, movie or Disney Plus? The answer is actually easy. This is the easiest one today. It's going to be theatrical. Indiana Jones Adventures are a theatrical adventure. They are movie events. And when they do bring back, it's not if, it's when. When they do bring back Indiana Jones, it's going to be theatrical. Of that, I have very little doubt. Actually, no, zero doubt. Zero doubt. Now, also as a side note, I don't think they're going to do it as long as Harrison Ford's still alive. So they very well may be waiting another 20 years or more, hopefully even more, because I want Harrison Ford to be around for a lot longer. But I mean, I honestly don't think as long as Harrison Ford's around that they're going to do one. I really don't. Just like it was kind of folly to try to do a new Han Solo movie. And by the way, I like Solo: A Star Wars Story. I think it's a really good, fun space adventure movie. But not one of the best Star Wars movies overall, but it was a fun little space adventure movie. But audiences had literally just seen Harrison Ford on screen as Han Solo like a year before that. Right? And I think they learned something from that. And so my guess is, and I have no insider information, this is just me guessing as a fan. I could be totally wrong, but my guess is that they don't do another swing at Indiana Jones until long after we don't have Harrison Ford with us anymore. That's just my guess. All right, thanks for writing that in, man. And that down, let's move on to our last what's more likely scenario sent in by one of our viewers. And this one comes into us from 2Ash, who writes, what's more likely? Denis Villeneuve does Dune 4 or moves on? All right, thanks for sending that in. Listen, man, you guys know I love the Dune films. I think Dune 2, straight up, I think Dune 2 is the best movie in the last 10 years. I really do. You can agree, disagree, whatever, but I think most of us agree it's pretty awesome, right? And I love the first Dune movie. I love the second one. I think it's between him and Christopher Nolan as being our best filmmaker today. I mean, Spielberg is still the greatest of all time, but I mean, like, actually today, who's at the height of their power? I think it's Denis Villeneuve and it's Christopher Nolan. So you can take a coin toss on those two. And we got Odyssey coming, which is so great. Anyway, I'm super excited for Dune 3. Little nervous about it because I don't like Dune Messiah. I don't think the book is very good. So we'll see how much liberties and how much changes that Denis does. But what does he do after that? Well, we already know that the next film he's doing after Dune 3 is James Bond, right? Lest you forget, it was announced he's going to be directing the new James Bond film, which is a huge win for Bond. Getting one of the world's greatest directors to come in and direct it. Now we've got to wait and see who they actually cast as Bond. But, you know, maybe he does another Bond film, maybe does another original, maybe he does Dune 4. I really believe what is more likely is that he is moving on. I do not think we're going to see Denis Villeneuve do a Dune 4. By the time Dune 3 comes out, he will have been completely wrapped up in the Dune universe, in the world of Arrakis, letting that spice flow for like 10 years from the first day he sat down and started writing concepts out. And I honestly think he's ready to move on. Remember, because Denis is also a guy who loves doing original films. And he's moving on to James Bond, which is going to scratch whatever franchise itch he has. But then I think he's going to want to start doing more originals again. So maybe we do get a Dune 4, but I don't think it'll be Denis, maybe producing, but not directing. So I think it is more likely, not a guarantee, but I think it is more likely that Denis moves on after Dune 3 to other things. And all right, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here and making this little show part of your day. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in those What's More Likelies. Thank you so much for giving us some fun things to talk about. And guys, listen, I am so keenly aware of what an honor it is that your time is precious and that you guys would choose to spend some of your precious and valuable time to come and hang out with us here and you know, enjoy our show. And thank you so much for that. It is a huge honor. I'm still going to be on the road for the next few days. I think the next show that I'm going to be doing will be, hopefully I'll be in Austin. Maybe I won't make it to Austin by then. But anyway, I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana right now. I think I'm going to go find a good place to have lunch and then hit the road again. I will see you guys again tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here, guys. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.